I see you dancing, I'm like, hola, 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 hola. With your move fancy, make me wanna hola, 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 hola. I got your attention, spending that moolah, 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 moolah. I'm a drop poppin', pocket, swola, 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 swola.
You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristadoulou.
Swola, 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 swola.
Oh my. March 11th, 2021. It is a beautiful Thursday here in Massachusetts. It is like a solid near 60 degrees. We are working our way out of the dark days of winter. We're pushing the clocks forward an hour this weekend. I'm in a good mood. The NFL world is on fire right now with releases, franchise tags, people not being tagged. That we finally figured out how much the salary cap's going to be. What a wild week. If you follow my Facebook page where I'm the most active on social media, I keep up with all the news going on throughout the league. And let me just tell you this. I feel like I'm just looking at my phone 24/7 trying to keep things up to date with all the most important posts. It has been insane this week. We have so much to talk about today. Like I said, the salary cap was set at $182.5 million. Tons of releases. First round draft pick from the Tennessee Titans being traded away. Isaiah Wilson. On top of that, players getting tagged and not being tagged that are now assumed to be heading into free agency. Dak Prescott signed a massive deal. Diana Rossini said it best last week. This was going to be a massacre of a week, and a massacre week it has been. I mean, I have my whole first page of notes here is literally just a list of people that are no longer on teams anymore and are probably not going to be on the same team anymore. So without further ado, let's just get into the show. Before we jump into everything, the question of the day for you guys today, going off of all the releases, the players not getting tagged, the free agency pool has never been this stacked. Who do you want to see your favorite team pick up this offseason? Free agency starts on the 17th. The tampering day starts on the 15th, so teams have a few days before it actually begins to kind of reach out to potential free agents and things like that, start kind of testing the waters and see what the money's going to be to bring in some players. With the salary cap dropping, I believe it's about roughly 8% from what it was last year, rather than going up like it has been for the last however many odd years. I mean, it's been a long time since the salary cap has dipped down. So many people available. Who do you think your team needs to pick up? Who do you want to see? Fire it down in the chat below. Let me know. I mean, the list of people on here, I mean, just from the releases this last week alone, Emmanuel Sanders, Malcolm Butler, and Kenny Vaccaro from the Titans. On top of that, you have Kevin Zeitler, a perennial offensive guard. I mean, one of the best guards in the league. He was released. The Chiefs just earlier this morning with a double whammy on a release, getting rid of Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz, both starting offensive tackles for the team. I have so many questions about how that's going to work out for them. We saw how bad their offensive line looked in the Super Bowl. Now you're getting rid of the two starters. I mean, like and on top of that, the Chiefs are over the cap, and we'll get to that later. But like so many questions going on. The Saints got rid of Janoris Jenkins. On top of that, players not tagged. Some big name players that are presumed to be heading to free agency now. Aaron Jones, Chris Carson, two big running backs, Hunter Henry from the Chargers, big name on the tight end list, Bud Dupree from the Steelers, Kenny Golladay from the Lions. All over the place, some huge names. There have been a lot of, there was a lot of tagging going on up until the tag deadline ended on Wednesday. Players like Leonard Williams on the Giants, Allen Robinson from Chicago. Those are some big names that were out there. Chris Godwin staying in Tampa Bay. So a lot of big names. People that kind of, were expected to get the franchise tag did in fact get the franchise tag. So big players moving throughout the league this offseason. Some big names staying put, but a lot a lot of big names moving around. What we'll do first is we'll kind of just talk about the salary cap situation and what some of these teams are working at. Right now, I have up on the screen a list to my left here of all the salary cap numbers for all 32 teams in the league here. The top 3 teams in the league, the Jaguars, Jets, and Patriots, in that order, all clearing $68 million plus in cap space. More than likely going to be big spenders, especially in a year where everyone is cutting, trying to make room. These are teams that just, they've been good with the money the last few years, and it put them in a phenomenal position, while some other teams, where if you look at the bottom of the list, teams like the Bears, the Saints, the Rams, 17, 25, $33 million still over the cap. The Saints started the offseason like $100 million over. They've made so many cuts, contract restructures, and they still have a ways to go. I think the one surprise on this list, the Rams, everyone's been like the Saints. The Rams are still sitting at $33 million over the cap. I mean, they just picked up Matthew Stafford, and they want to push for the Super Bowl next year, bringing him in. But you don't have the money. I mean, obviously, they're probably going to restructure some deals, but I mean, you guys need to figure out some money situation. Free agency starts in 6 days, and tampering starts in 4. I mean, you guys better get a move on restructuring some deals or releasing some players if you guys are going to try to build a team around Stafford. But I mean, there's a lot of teams that are really set up well here. I mean, if you go down all the way up until about, I would say the Broncos, everyone that's like about 30 plus million there, a lot of money to spend. On top of that, I mean, with the big names that are in free agency, this is a year where we could see a massive shift in just the way the things are running in the league as far as teams go. I mean, huge names just going into free agency here, and it puts like teams like the Jets, the Patriots, the Bengals, Washington, teams that want to really build around the young group that they have and really turn into a contender. This is a phenomenal year for them to be able to pick up a lot of big names and really solidify positions that might have been holes for the last few years. The Bengals are going to have a field day with picking up offensive linemen. They're projected to take Penei Sewell from Oregon in the draft. And on top of that, you have players like Schwartz. You have, like the offensive line group is so deep in free agency now. You can draft a person that's really young, bring in a veteran or two, and really build a line, because Burrow was getting throttled last season. So teams like that really set up with all that money to be able to make a really big splash and push themselves in the right direction going into next season. As a Colts fan, they're sitting at $46 million for a while now. I'm like, man, they have so much cap space. Why don't we sign anybody? But they've built so well through the draft. They're going to be able to re-sign all their players. And in a year where teams need money, I'm almost relieved as a fan, because I'm like, wow, all this money management kind of worked out well. I know that they weren't planning for something like this, and nobody was, but it just works out that they have all the money in a year when everyone needs money at this point. So cap situations looking pretty crazy for some teams. I mean, you have, if I'm counting this correctly here, what is this? 3, 6, 9, 10 teams still in the red that still need to find room to just get under the cap. Never mind even make space to maybe bring in a player or two. There's going to be a lot of teams that are just letting players go, and I have no idea how they're going to be able to turn around and make up for those players lost. We'll talk first about teams that are able to make moves. We'll jump right into the Patriots first. The Patriots, they have had a lot of conversation going on around them this offseason. I live in New England. I'm in Massachusetts. So I listen to, stations like 98.5, the Sports Hub. They're always talking Patriots talk. Who are they going to bring in? Who are they not going to bring in? The conversation right now mainly going on here in the area is, are the Patriots going to be making moves for somebody like Jimmy G? Jimmy G's only owed about like $2.5 million to the 49ers. So if they decide to let him go somewhere, they're really not going to be hit for much money in terms of what they owe him. That $2.5 million is nothing, especially in a year like this. So with that, the Patriots just received 2 compensatory draft picks, a third for losing Tom Brady and a fourth for losing Kyle Van Noy last year. They obviously, people were expecting them to maybe get 2 fourths. They ended up with a third and a fourth. Obviously, the Tom Brady one kind of, of course, they're going to get a big pick for that one. Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl this year, I believe, led to them getting the top compensatory pick in the draft this year. So, the Patriots have a little bit of firepower now with these extra picks to maybe make a play. You know, if they give a couple of third rounders for Jimmy G, I could see that as working. Jimmy G's coming off, you know, a couple of injured seasons. And then on top of that, he only had the 1 year that brought him to the Super Bowl. You can argue, yeah, he was there for that team, but you can also argue for the defense carrying that team there along with the running game. So, you know, a lot of conversation as to what would make sense. I could see Jimmy G being pulled from San Francisco now that the Patriots have some few extra picks. They just made a trade to bring in Trent Brown, who they just let go a couple years ago. A lot of concerns with his weight. He's about 30 pounds over what he would normally be playing at. So there's a lot of conversation on that. But if they can get him into shape, have him buy back into the system where he became a star to begin with, I think that's a massive trade for them. And then on top of that, they pull in someone like Jimmy G. They have all this extra money. There's a lot of big names going in free agency. The Patriots are typically a team where they don't spend a lot of money, but in a year where nobody can really spend a lot of money except for a handful of teams, this would be the year to kind of, you know, break the mold, go against the status quo and start to spend big. You know, bring in a big wide receiver if you're going to go after Jimmy G, or if you're not going to go after Jimmy G, some, you know, bigger named quarterback. The Patriots have to at this point. You have so much money. So many people are fighting to just get under the cap at this point, letting go of players left and right that you wouldn't have expected to be off the team just a couple of weeks ago. This is the year for them to kind of flip the script and make some big changes, stack the roster with some big name players, and just go all in. You can put yourself right back into the playoff chase with a few big free agent signings and a really good draft this year. And I think bringing Jimmy G into New England, I know a lot of people are saying, you know, he's not the quarterback everyone thought he was. Belichick really liked him. He fit really well in the New England system. I have a feeling that if he gets the quarterback he never wanted to let go in his system again, it would greatly benefit not only the Patriots, but also Jimmy G's progression going forward as a quarterback in the league. I really, really believe that, you know, because I just feel that I feel he's almost run his course in San Francisco. The injuries are a problem. He was only there that 1 year. The defense is really stacked in the Super Bowl. You know, there's a lot of, you know, you can argue for him, you can argue against him. I just don't feel that him being in San Francisco is the way for them to go. I think it's time for them to part ways. And, you know, San Francisco would be a fool to not take a good opportunity of collecting a handful of draft picks and seeing where they can go with the quarterbacking position. I think that they're, you know, someone like Ryan Fitzpatrick, you could almost like equal in value to Jimmy G at this point. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I mean, Fitzpatrick almost took the Dolphins to the playoffs last year. If it wasn't, I mean, they went 10-6. If it wasn't for the AFC just being so stacked at the bottom, I mean, they're in the playoffs. So, you know, I think that they need to just kind of unload Jimmy G. They're taking no real cap hit for it. It would be a really good move for them. You know, so did the Patriots finally break the status quo and start spending money, make a few splash plays? I think the Trent Brown signing might be a sign of things to come, but I'm very curious as to where that's going to go, and I would love to see them make some moves with that, what is it, $68.5 million in cap space they have here. I don't know if the Patriots have ever had that much cap space in, you know, the last handful of however many years, so I want to see them make some plays. Continuing on with teams that need to make some moves, I'm very curious as how this is going to work out for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're in some trouble. They just got rid of both of their starting offensive tackles in Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz, and we all saw what their offensive line looked like in the Super Bowl. It wasn't very good. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life, and then on top of that, I mean, they didn't have any time in the pocket. I mean, it was a mess, just an absolute mess. We all saw what happened with that front seven from Tampa Bay just chasing Mahomes down. Now you're going to let go of, you know, a piece that was missing already in the Super Bowl. Schwartz, you know, missing as well. I'm very curious as to how the Chiefs are going to be able to recoup this, because I believe the Chiefs are still what's the number? I have the cap right here. They're still about $4.4 million over the cap. So this kind of puts them in a weird spot where they just cleared $18 million because they had to get rid of two starting tackles. Their left guard, I've talked about this before. He had a 54.5, I believe, PFF rating from PFF. So, I mean, at this point, you have maybe two solid starters on your offensive line. You just lost two of them, and you don't even have money to bring any other people in. The Chiefs have a lot of work to do. Someone, you know, a team that was, you know, you expected to kind of be in the running for the Super Bowl. And I know that, you know, beyond this year, things can change. The cap is expected to go back up. But I mean, looking into just next season alone, we're looking at a real possibility of maybe the Chiefs not being quite as dominant next year as we would have expected them to be. The lack of an offensive line is really going to hurt them. They don't really have a lot of money. They're going to have to restructure a lot of deals, and I'm kind of curious as to how this is going to shape out for them. I mean, can they make it back to never mind the Super Bowl, can they make it back to the playoffs with just a ragtag group on the offensive line? I really don't think so, especially if they even do make the playoffs. At that point, you're playing teams with solid defenses, solid front sevens. They're going to get eaten alive. The Chiefs have a lot of work to do. I'm very curious to see where they go. I really hope they can figure something out. And we're going to talk about it in a minute, but there was the Cowboys made a big move to kind of alleviate some of their cap restructuring, and we'll talk about that, but that's kind of something that we're going to have to look at for the Chiefs and see if they're going to be able to do with some of their big name money players. They just gave big deals to like Travis Kelce. I know Tyrann Mathieu on a fairly large deal. There's a lot of players that are owed a lot of money on that team that just because of the year, they're probably going to have to take a pay cut into this season and then backload the contracts a little bit more. But the Chiefs have a lot of work to do, Beyond the Chiefs and all of their cap struggles that they're having, which aren't quite as bad as this next team, the New Orleans Saints, there's a lot of talk going on about the New Orleans Saints. First off, we'll start with, the kind of elephant in the room. Drew Brees has still not announced his retirement. And a lot of people are wondering what is going on with that, myself included. Everyone that I've heard that's talked about it, that knows about the situation and whatnot, have said, Drew Brees is just waiting for the opportune time to retire, but videos are coming out of him working out. Is there a possibility that Drew Brees, as a competitor, does not want his last game to be the way it went against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I'm starting to think more so. We're at a point right now where the Saints need to know if Drew Brees is going to be back. He needs to announce his retirement within the next 5 days at most. And I say that because the Saints need to be doing they obviously are, but it's like a looming cloud just over them of just what's going to happen at the quarterback situation. I'm sure that that Drew Brees being on the Saints would love to have him back, but at the same time, can he make it through an entire 16-game season? I feel like the training he's doing is for him to try to prove that he can. I don't know where this is going to go. I know the pundits are saying he's going to retire. The insiders are all saying the same thing, but it really, really feels like Drew Brees is not just going to let this thing go and be done with the NFL the way he was. I could see him coming back. The Saints have been doing a lot of restructuring, but they're still in a lot of trouble. I mean, they've lost. Who have they lost here? Jared Cook, Justin Hill, Emmanuel Sanders, Janoris Jenkins, all released within the last week. They have free agents like Sheldon Rankins and Trey Hendrickson. I mean, Jameis Winston's going out there, and Jameis Winston in the playoff game, Drew Brees supposedly said to him, this is your team now. The Saints don't even have the money to bring him back. It's not his team at this point. There's no money for him. They still owe $25 million over the cap. So, the Saints are in a lot of trouble. They're just going to have to keep cutting these big name people, but I really just don't know how this is going to go for them. The Saints are not going to look the same next year, and I hope that Drew Brees at least factors that in. A lot of weapons gone. That defense is not going to look the same, period, end of story. I mean, they have a lot of restructuring they're probably going to have to do with some of their top money players. Someone like maybe Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, who are eating up a lot of money right now because of their contracts. They're probably going to have to, like I mentioned with the Chiefs, take some of the money going into next year and backload it into their following year, the contracts. I mean, a lot of trouble with the Saints. I have no idea how they're going to work their way under the $25 million mark. They started at $100 million over the cap space, and they are just in a lot of trouble, losing so many players and having no money to bring them back in. I was looking at their free agent list, and like Sheldon Rankins and Trey Hendrickson really jumped out to me, Jameis Winston being another one. Those are three big players that, a lot of people were like, would expect to be on the team next year. How are they going to even bring them back is like the question that they're sitting here with. And I'm very curious to see how they go and answer that question. And a good example of how to kind of welcome to the show, Steven. How's it going? But one thing that I'm really looking at here is what the Dallas Cowboys have been doing. The Dallas Cowboys just earlier today basically did a giant restructure of the offensive line. Now, I'm somebody who, when Dak Prescott signed his big contract a few days ago, looked at that and said, all right, great. They do have their franchise quarterback, but that's a lot of money. $40 million per year average, roughly. It's not going to obviously be that every single year, but that's like the average for it, roughly, in just simple speak. Now, when you're looking at things like, the defense having all this name value, but not performing to what they were supposed to actually be, it's not good for them. They have a lot of work that they're going to have to do on the defensive side of the football. So they went ahead and basically took all of their starters from the offensive line and just restructured the entire contract for them. They ended up clearing about, what's the number here? They cleared about $19 million in cap space because of that. That is huge for them. So much money. It puts them at effectively, let's see here, Cowboys, $19.6 million under the cap now that they can use to kind of pick up players on defense as we go through the offseason. That's huge. So when I saw the Dak signing, I'm thinking to myself, all right, the defense is the problem though. Dak can throw for all of his life if he wants, but they were still 2-3 when he was putting up all these yards and touchdowns. They need him to be able to play with a defense that can help him. It does not matter how much points they're putting up. They allowed 495 points on defense. That's not going to help them win games, even if they're putting up 400 points themselves. Unbelievable. So with all this money cleared up now, the offensive line taken care of, and if they plan on restructuring anyone else, I'm excited to see how the Dallas Cowboys kind of take this on. This is a good opportunity for them to really start to rebuild their defense and maybe bring in some actual impact players. I feel like every year everyone thinks, the Cowboys are going to the moon. The Cowboys are going to the moon, but they've never really lived up to the hype. Obviously, last year, Dak getting hurt kind of derailed that whole thing, but now that they have Dak coming back, he signed to a deal. That whole contract drama that's been going on for 2 or 3 years is behind them. They can really look forward to just building this defense and building a team around him that can actually be a championship caliber team. Because Dak Prescott's a really good quarterback. I would say that's about as far as I'd have to go at this point with that. Some people would argue he's a top 5. I don't think that. I think he's more of a top 10 quarterback. Where on that top 10 list, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about that because, anyone's top 10 is going to look different. So it's not really a conversation. I would just throw him into that group of top 10 quarterbacks. So if they can get a really solid defense around him, they have the offensive pieces, they have a really good offensive line. I firmly believe that with this move and them restructuring all these contracts, the Cowboys are set up for success with Prescott, because that was the big question is, they have the big deal for Prescott. What can they do about that defense? And they have the money now to do something about it. And then on top of that, that's pretty much everything I have for Cowboys. Beyond the NFL news, though, that's pretty much everything for NFL coverage, all the important stuff that I have that I've picked out as far as that all goes. College pro days are going on. Clemson's is actually happening now, or it may be almost over if I'm not mistaken. It might actually even be over. I could be wrong about that. Clemson's pro day going down. Travis Etienne was, kind of the highlight reel of the show. For those of you that did not know, Trevor Lawrence back on February 12th had his pro day. He threw because of an injured shoulder that he has. He had surgery on his labrum on his non-throwing shoulder, so left side, not his right side, because his right side is his throwing arm. Left side shoulder. He threw back in February, so he wasn't a part of the pro day. So everyone was looking at Travis specifically. He ended up height 5'10". He weighed at about 215 pounds, which is actually 16 pounds over his starting weight from last season going into the last year of college that he played. His 40-yard dash came out to a pretty awesome 4.4. For somebody who's 216, that is a phenomenal run to have. That means he's very quick. Obviously, when you look at things like, combine numbers, you can argue, well, this is a guy in shorts and a t-shirt. It's not somebody running in pads. Yes, but you can at least see the pure speed from the athlete in that 40-yard dash. And for somebody that's 216 to be running that quick, that's great. He is in my opinion, the number 1 back in this draft, and I would put Najee Harris behind him at number 2. But I think he is the perennial number 1 running back in this draft. And I think with the combine day that he had, looking as good as he did through his drills, putting up the 40 and putting on all this muscle, the whole 15 extra pounds thing. I mean, he's going in the first round. There's a handful of teams that could use a running back. I saw some people picking like him going to the Cardinals or something like that. I could definitely see that. But he's definitely he's a first round back for sure. I know a lot of teams hesitate about going running back in the first round, but someone like Travis, he just looks like a game changer for a team that needs somebody at running back. And he's somebody whose impact day 1 could be your bell cow running back. I really, really expect him to go in the first round, and I'm very impressed with the number he put up there in that 40-yard dash. I was curious about what he was going to run, a 4.4, very quick for somebody his size. Outside of pro day stuff, kind of just like the last bit of information that I have for you guys, the fan-controlled football league. This Saturday, the playoffs begin for them. They just wrapped up their final week 4 last week. The Beasts went down in their first loss to the Zappers. Josh Gordon had just been signed to the team. He was an impact player in that game, 2 touchdowns on the first drive and final play of the game. So big things going on in the FCF. Basically, this is how it all shook out. I knew going into the playoffs it was going to be the 4 teams. I was not sure how they were going to handle it, if it was just going to be 1 seed versus the 4 seed, 2 versus the 3. They actually left up the seeding and voting for who was going to play who to fans to kind of put in the input of the Beasts specifically. The Beasts were the number 1 team in the league. They went 3-1. So pretty big opportunity to, really separate themselves from other leagues, and they just went ahead and let the fans kind of have some input on who the Beasts were going to be playing. They opted to go against the number 4 team in the league, the Glacier Boys, at 1-3, and it's been interesting to see and kind of follow the teams going through social media. So much trash talk. If you guys have Twitter, check out what they're doing on Twitter. Watching the teams go back and forth, just kind of jiving at each other, is hilarious. It's one of those things where, you see how the NFL and like the NCAA operates as professional leagues, and then you kind of look at what they're doing, and it just feels much more commonplace and much more like real, like, I don't know, it just has like a real nature to it, is the only way I can describe it. And it's hilarious watching them go back and forth to like on each other and just kind of talking crap on each other's names. It's hilarious. But the Beasts opted to play the Glacier Boys, so that means the Wild Aces and the Zappers are going to go head to head. I'm really excited for how this sets up, because this sets up for the Zappers and the Beasts to end up being in the finals against each other. I have the Zappers going over the Wild Aces and the Beasts going over the Glacier Boys. I think that the Beasts, they've just been very dominant this year. They've done a good job with the franchise tagging of the players that they believed were worth keeping on the team. And then the Zappers, having Johnny Manziel was obviously a big thing, kind of the big name player. But now that they have Josh Gordon, a legitimate NFL caliber talent playing on that team, and I believe that he didn't get drafted anywhere. I'm pretty sure they franchise tagged him as a player. That's huge for them. That makes them the legitimate number 2 team in this league, and I think that they'll end up going over the Wild Aces, and that sets us up for a Beasts-Zappers rematch after the Zappers gave the Beasts their only loss of the season last week. So I'm very excited to see how that whole thing shakes out. This whole experience with the fan-controlled football league, shout out to them. This whole thing came out of nowhere, and apparently it's been in the planning for the last 5 years or so. I knew nothing about what was going on with this, and I literally learned about it the week it was debuting, and it has been one of the wildest experiences to watch, but I love every second of it. I'm somebody who, I enjoy just football as a whole. It doesn't have to be the NFL. I've said this before. I loved seeing the American Alliance Football League and the XFL going on a couple of years back. It's unfortunate what happened to those leagues, but I loved having another option during the offseason of the NFL. And the fan-controlled football league not only took the whole let's be another option during the offseason, but let's on top of that, bring the fans along with us and make it a part of the show. From allowing fans to review plays as a group, to allowing them to call plays, to make decisions, change rules. They're so interactive on social media. And if you go to the FCF app that they have, you can see all the things that they're allowing people to vote on daily. They have changed a handful of things just week by week, allowing the fans to make these decisions that we clamor for the NFL to do in hopes that they do, and they still haven't done for years on end. It's crazy the amount of rule changes that need to be done in the NFL that don't get changed because the integrity of the game, or just they want to see the league, kind of represent what it's always been. But there's things that just desperately need to be changed. And then you see a league like the FCF where they're just like, you know what, screw it. We're just going to have the fans decide this. We might as well, right? There was a team playing on a 5th down last week in a game. There had some 5th down option going on. What's all that about? But I love it. It's exciting. It's fun. It's very fast paced. The games are, over and done in an hour. And whether you agree with the play style, and it's, very scramble heavy, and it's just there was a game that was 56-52 the other day. It's supposed to be high scoring entertainment. Take it for what it is. Don't compare it to the NFL. It's not the same thing, but it's so interactive. It's so much fun, and I'm excited to see where the league goes. I cannot wait for the playoffs this weekend. I personally would love to see the Zappers go all the way. That's kind of what I'm shooting for. I think that, especially after proving they could knock off the Beast last week in that, game-ending decision, I have the Zappers winning the entire thing. I think the Zappers have the Wild Aces this week. The Beasts have the Glacier Boys this week. I'm excited to see these games. If you're wondering how to watch, the games are live on Twitch or on the FCF football app that they have there. You can watch them on either place. Twitch is obviously, for those of you that don't know, a streaming platform, very interactive. There's a chat that goes along with it, and you can vote on things either through the app or right through Twitch when it comes to like play calling and stuff like that. So check it out. I mean, if you have the time, the coverage for the games start at 7:30 p.m. I believe the first game is going to be at 8 o'clock and the second one at 9:30. I think that's how it's typically been every single week. So check it out. Just kind of see how it is. Experience it. See if it's just something fun. I've had a blast covering it. I can't wait for the games this weekend. I'm definitely sitting down to watch them both. I want to see how everything shakes out. But beyond that, that's pretty much the show, everyone. I don't have too much else I need to talk to you guys about. We are in for a wild few more days. Free agency starts the 17th. Tampering period starts the 15th. There are some teams with some serious money. The Pats, Jets, and Jaguars are all 68+ mil over the cap. They're going to be some big spenders. There's teams that are still 25 to 33 million over the cap and are just cutting players left and right, and we don't even know how they're going to fill their positions. So there's a lot to keep an eye on, a lot to keep track of. I'm excited to be a part of it all. I hope you guys are as well. And if you're enjoying the show, comment, share the streams, let people know what's going on if they're looking for a new place to watch football that's not just giving you top 10s every day because there's not a whole lot to talk about. I'm here for like 30, 45 minutes a day, just kind of filling you guys in on what's going on and chop, leaving it at that. So without further ado, my name is Ethan, everybody. I appreciate you all for joining me on this fantastic, beautiful Thursday because like I said, it is a nice 60 degrees outside today. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll catch you all Monday afternoon, same time, same place, with all the news that happened throughout the entirety of this weekend. Have a good one, everybody.